A lot of people are, sucked into being worried and creating all of this angst and anxiety
Mm,
based on what other people might think about them, or even if they do think about them, and they don't necessarily have that identity to stand on, to know that, hey, I can have peace because, here's the things that are constant and that we know that are constant.
mm-hmm,
Your relationship with God, your relationship with the family, these things are constant. And
mm-hmm.
all this other stuff is going to seem like it's going crazy sometimes, but at the end of
Those
the
are
day,
variables. Mm-hmm.
that's just stuff, and we can't control that anyway. We control what we can do and how we react and how we, I mean, like coaching football, we can control how our kids react, how they play, the effort that they give, the attitude. We can't control the calls all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so at the end of the day, you can't control all the calls, but
Welcome to Impact and Fulfillment with Coach Mike D, where you'll gain practical wisdom and dynamic insight from amazing conversations to live your best life.
What's going on, y'all? This is Coach Mike D with another episode of Impact and Fulfillment. So dig this, man. We're going to have a really cool conversation, a life story with a lot of twists and turns. And, before we get into it, it's kind of interesting. People come into your life for different reasons. They say for reasons, seasons, and lifetimes. And the guy that I have on the show today is my man, Trae Wieniewitz. And what's interesting, he and I came together as coaches of our son's youth football team. And it was funny, like he wasn't initially a coach on the team. He came on after the season started a little bit because we were at practice and he started kicking the ball and he was bombing it, right? And all of a sudden, one of the coaches was like, yeah, we talked to Trae and he said he's interested in coming on and helping and working with the kickers. Next thing you know, he's like running special teams and doing this and doing that. But in the midst of all of that, he and I have built a relationship. We talk a good bit. We talk about life. We talk about faith. We talk about family and everything. And as we talk, each time we talk, another layer kind of gets revealed about a story. And as a person who tells stories, I'm always fascinated when I hear the potential for a story. And long story short, that's kind of a simple backstory as to how Trae Wieniewitz and myself got connected. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about a brother who's a husband. He's a father. He was a college golfer at LSU. He's originally from Mississippi. He's a former financial professional, which he's going to jump into the details a little bit about kind of what happened there. But he's had some twists and turns in life. And ultimately, all of that has led him to where he is today. And he's really pursuing a life of impact and fulfillment. That and is a key here, and that's the title of this podcast. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to welcome my man, Trae Wieniewitz. What's going on, brother?
man, thank you much. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Man, no problem, no problem. It's like, we've talked before, and each time that we talk, something else pops, another layer of something. And I'm like, this is interesting. I think this would be a really cool conversation, not just for you and I to have on the sidelines or at practice, but for others to peer into, to really glean some insight and inspiration from. So I appreciate you, man.
For sure, man. Well, yeah, we're from the football, the Pee Wee football field to life. It's nice to share your experiences and hopefully help others with something that they're going through now or have been through or are going to go through in the future.
Absolutely. And it's interesting as you mentioned that what I've come to learn through life is that my experiences, in all honesty, are not for me, right? Like the experiences and the things that I go through, good, bad, or indifferent, are typically lessons that can be imparted into someone else, or it's potentially the components of a playbook that can be imparted into someone else for them to, in essence, act, to put into action for their life. So yeah, so
Yeah, I mean the
definitely,
hard
man.
part about that too is we want to think it's all about us and
Mm-hmm.
that the actions or the things that happen to us is because of us. And I think, you and myself both, but through all the things that we go through and have been through and are going through, I think that's a big revelation in my life in the last, 5 to 7 years is, a lot of times the things that are happening, and to us, it just feels like it might be the worst thing in the world, or why is this happening? But a lot of times it's not about us.
And it's, to me, that's a beautiful segue into what I do for virtually every interview, which is give shout outs. Like, I like for the guests to give shout outs, because who are we without the wind beneath our wings? Again, it's not about us. It's about those that are connected to us and those that have paved the way for us. So before we jump into your story, give some shout outs to, in essence, the wind beneath your wings, my man.
Man, I would have to say, mostly family, at the moment. Just thinking through like the last, handful of years and the tough times that you've gone through, my parents, starting back from going to college and, having a tough time my first year of college, ended up switching colleges, and just a really difficult time. And especially at the stage that you're 18 years old and things are changing, you think you have your life's path, thought out, and then things just take a turn, and it's like, man, you don't know what to do. And but it's nice to have a family and a dad and a mom to call them up and just be real with and say, hey, this is going on, I just don't know what to do. So I think my parents, for sure, just over the years, growing up, and then recently, and then for the last number of years, my wife Caitlin has just been a big rock in my life, spiritually, and from a marriage standpoint. So just people that you can walk through life with, I think, deserve that shout out, because a lot of times it's real easy to feel alone if you're going through something that's difficult, or having somebody at least just to talk through it, to figure out what God wants you to do in a given situation.
And it's powerful. You mentioned the word people you can walk through life with. And, just a kind of a backstory. When I started doing interviews years and years and years ago, for some reason, I just felt the need to have individuals give shout outs up front. And it was funny because I interviewed a guy who was a stunt motorcycle rider in a lot of, big movies or whatever. And he was telling me while we were doing the interview, he said, it's funny because when you see the movie credits, all the important people get listed up front. And I was like, wow, because, you see starring Will Smith and starring Jamie Foxx and, whoever else. And it's an interesting perspective, because I didn't even subconsciously know I was doing that. That's one. But then two, the real inspiration for it initially came when I would read the bios of individuals. You go to a website and you talk about the CEO of this organization, and they talk about all their accomplishments and where they've gone and what they've done and their 3 decades of experience, etc. And then, like, the last 2 lines, in their free time, they enjoy spending time with their wife, their kids, and traveling the world. I'm just like, well, dang. all these accomplishments get, 12 paragraphs, but the things that are most important only get 2 sentences. And so for me, I always made it a conscious effort, a conscious, decision to put that up front and to give that the priority up front before we get into the actual bulk of what, the content, so to speak. So,
yeah, what's interesting about that too? I mean, it's just like putting gratitude first, being thankful first, and having that as a practice. When I first moved up here to Knoxville, Tennessee, I listened to talk radio, and, in the morning, I'm in, here, don't really know. I've not been here more than a couple of weeks. I turn on the radio because I just want to know what's going on. And I get to listen to this guy on the radio. And I'm like, man, I like this. I connect with this guy. And Halloran Hill. And so I got to know, doing radio for a number of years, got to know Halloran really well, and Chris and his whole crew. And man, but this is kind of a funny story, and it relates to what you're saying. But, his thing when he starts his show is, give gratitude. What are 3 things that you're thankful for today? And that's how he started his radio show. And he's done that for however how many years he's been on the radio, and he's got his TV show and everything like that. So, for me, I think that, we lose perspective, like you said, and, we get caught up in the daily life, the daily life, whether it's our work or our job or our kids and football and all that stuff. And a lot of times, having that time daily that we put aside, to be grateful to those people or the Lord or whoever those important folks are in your life, I think keeps our perspective to be able to walk through that day So yeah, that made me remind me of Halloran. So the second half of that story, which you'll appreciate of that. So I listened to Halloran probably, man, it's probably a couple of months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm driving to work one day, and lo and behold, I see the billboard, right? And the billboard, look, the billboard is Hal, Phil, and somebody else, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, Halloran's black. I didn't know Halloran was black. I'm like, so it was just real funny. And I think I've told him that story too, but it was like, man, I listened to him for months, and I'm like, man, this guy is awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of funny. It was like, I didn't, you always, if you've never seen somebody, you listen to an audiobook or whatever, and you're kind of picturing what the people
Mm-hmm.
are going to be like in your head. And it was a funny moment for me.
That is, it is interesting. So I'm connected with Hal. He's a good buddy
Yeah.
of mine. I actually had him. He was on my show about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we did a long interview. I mean, we basically had to cut it into 2 episodes because he just dropped so many gems.
Oh man,
And,
he's
and
amazing. I love
oh, he's
Halloran, man.
amazing, full of wisdom. He got inducted into the Tennessee Radio Hall of
For
Fame,
sure.
I think last year, and
Yeah.
yeah, he's top notch. And
He's
so yeah,
impacted a lot of lives, man. He uses his skills very, very wisely to invest in others. It's amazing.
using skills to invest in others, dude. Like, I think we're going to dive more into this a little later, but before we get into, some of the things that you've overcome in the last, 7, 8, 9 years, take us back, man. You're originally from Mississippi,
Right.
and you grew up there, and you were playing golf, doing things, hanging out, and you ultimately ended up going to LSU to play golf. Take us back to kind of the origin story of Trae Wieniewitz.
Yeah, man. So I played a whole bunch of sports in high school, and I think baseball was probably my favorite sport. But I'm about the same size as you, and after I got to about junior in high school, I loved playing baseball. But I started to realize that I wasn't, D1 size for
Uh-huh.
baseball. But I had always enjoyed playing football and golf, and had an offer to go to Mississippi State, full scholarship my first freshman year of college. So I went up there. And I would say that at the time that was probably the worst year of my life. I had my best year ever, my best summer playing golf, made it to the US Amateur, played fantastic, set a course record for one course that still stands today. And I got to the freshman year, and I was the only person on the Mississippi State golf team for Mississippi.
Wow.
And so everybody else was from a different state, and that's where the coach was from, and he recruited from there. And it just personalities just didn't mix, and it was difficult. And then at the end of that year, the had a conversation with the coach, and they're like, I mean, I traveled and I played okay, and but not the way I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was just so many other things, it was just an adjustment and difficult. And at the end of that year, the coach was doing our reviews, and basically told me that I wasn't good enough to play there.
Wow.
And yeah,
Hold on,
and
pause,
so
pause. You had just coming out of high school, you had made it to the U.S. amateurs, you had set course records, you probably were highly recruited as a golfer,
mhm,
etc. And at the end of that freshman year, you were told that you weren't good enough.
yep.
Wow.
And at that point, with the turmoil of the year and everything, and like, as a kid or an 18-year-old kid at the time, you think you're a man, but you're not. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I didn't know what else to do, except call my dad and say, hey, Dad, man, this is what the coach is talking about. And it just, basically just kind of broke your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad for years has been I mean, he was a original mindset kind of a guy. That's anybody that knows him, he coached high school baseball, he coached college baseball at Mississippi State, played college baseball, and coached for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has like 8 state championships as a high school baseball coach.
Wow.
So, but I say that because mindset, from a very early age, the reading Norman Vincent Peale, listening, back then it was cassette tapes of Anthony
Mm-hmm.
Robbins, right? Back then it was just all of these things, and having that mindset. And we talk to the kids at football all the time, but the things that you invest in your mind and your mindset going forward is so that you can draw from that when those times come that you really need it, because everybody's got a great mindset when things are going well, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, at the end of the day, long story short, I came home that summer, worked, kind of just got back to myself playing, and decided to go try to walked on and switch schools, played at LSU for a couple more years and graduated from there. And but yeah, about golf, well, I guess my junior year, I was fortunate I had been spending some time with a group and they call it Crew now, but it's Campus Crusade for Christ. It's a Bill Bright ministry. And I was fortunate at the time too. And I know you have some really good friends that that you met from your fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, I'd grown up in church a lot, but I had been fortunate to get in a fraternity. I was in Lambda Chi Alpha there at LSU, just a fantastic organization. But I met some of the friends that are still friends to this day, and it also kind of gave me a different perspective, because they had like a Bible study group, and it was actually people that I respected and looked up to that, were kind of seeking after the Lord as far as their lifestyle, as opposed to not just going to church. So,
That's right.
So that being said, just starting to have that journey in life and make that a priority in whatever circumstance, I realized my junior year and I traveled and played, every year at LSU, and met a bunch of people, very fortunate. College athletics is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, after my junior year, I just knew in my heart that, I wasn't going to try to go pro or play pro or anything. And we had a lot of upcoming freshmen on the team that were good, but really just all of us as freshmen, we just need experience playing. So I didn't play my senior year. I just kind of stepped down and didn't play. Not that I didn't want to play golf, but I just, it was like, hey, I got another year, and you only carry 5 people on a team when you travel. And,
Wow.
So anyway, that's how and I probably didn't pick up a golf club for 15 years after that, but
Wow.
yeah. So, but I still get to play, I love playing with my dad. And, but just kind of going back to, the overcoming, adversity, and the mindset of, just how to, regardless of what other people say about you or whatever, that we have to, as Christian men, have a identity that's not based on what other people say about you, or what other people think about you, because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If you're, being true to yourself and true to the Lord, then, that's what we can kind of rest on and not have to worry about as much of what, other people say or think about us, because we know who we are. So, but I learned that, and, obviously as you get older in life, things come full circle, and you're able to use some of those things in a different way, whether it's with your marriage or your kids or, coaching. So it's definitely been good. So long, getting to up here in 2005, I moved up here, didn't have kids at the time, had started a financial business in Louisiana. And 2005, they had Hurricane Katrina. So, it was
so was that the thing that moved you? Hurricane Katrina is why you relocated from.
Yep.
Were you in New Orleans or just in?
I was in Baton Rouge. We lived in Gonzales at the time, so I was about halfway between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Okay.
But at the time, Baton Rouge was the hub for FEMA and everything. So basically, they shut the interstate down from Baton Rouge all the way to New Orleans, and that was where all the rescue was from. So it was funny that the population of Baton Rouge at the time, it went from 500,000 to over 1 million in 2 days, because that was where everybody evacuated. That was where everybody evacuated it from. And so it was chaos, because all the roads were closed. You can imagine if Knoxville doubled in population tomorrow.
That's right.
Like, what's that going to be like? Well, cell towers didn't work. Everything, they were just overloaded. It was just disaster. So, we got in the car and, drove up here. And fortunately, I had a business model that was working. And I said, hey, we can go wherever. Didn't have kids at the time. And fortunately settled here in Knoxville. And,
why Knoxville? Was there something that brought you to Knoxville?
Yeah, I always think it's God for sure. But, we had a couple of the marketing company that I worked with at the time. would give you kind of a territory of where you could do your mailers and stuff like that. And so, Knoxville, Nashville, and Texas were the three places that we had kind of narrowed it down to. And we honestly were driving up to go to Nashville, right? And we were like, okay, well, we'll just go to Knoxville along the way, and then we'll go over to Nashville. And we hit Knoxville, and we stayed here for a couple of days. And I'm like, and my wife at the time, I'm like, man, this is where we need to be. We don't want to, we didn't even go to Nashville. So, so we just ended up here because we felt like that was where we needed to be. And, started over, that's 2005. So, yeah.
Wow. And so you weren't displaced per se. You chose to leave, but then you picked Knoxville, and that's where you set up the financial model that you were working with in Louisiana in Knoxville in 2005.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Started from scratch. Didn't know anybody up here. And, we had a seminar model where we would, do mailers, buy dinners, tell people about what we did, and try to set up appointments at, in-person live events.
And so what type of financial services were you providing? Were you an advisor? Were you a consultant? Were you a wealth manager? What type of stuff were you doing?
We pretty much for my whole career. I mean, we got into doing a whole bunch of or a handful of different things, but typically we worked with a lot of insurance companies. We did more fixed income investments, annuities, things that didn't have, as much risk. I didn't really do, stock trading or mutual funds or the stock market. So we kind of centered around insurance products.
Okay. Centered around insurance products. And so you, I guess, reached pretty good success, doing what you were doing from building in 2005 when you got to Knoxville. Talk to us a little bit about the rise of your business, and then family, et cetera. And, and then kind of what that led to, a few years later.
Yeah. So, we ended up having all of our kids, 3 kids up here. And, my business was very blessed. We're with, some companies that had some really good strategies for marketing, which allowed us to get in front of, or allowed me to get in front of the right people to talk to help the people that needed our services. And, we were able to, I met a handful of people. Jim Brogan is a guy that's still here, still on the radio, been on the radio. You probably heard Jim. He's a great guy. Turns out his daughter and my daughter were in the same class at CAK. And then I ran into him at at an event, not even here. I don't even remember where the event was, somewhere in Vegas or California or somewhere. But anyway, he, kind of got me into radio. And so I was, fortunate to, start a radio show and, kind of modeled it after kind of what he was doing, and was on the radio for 5 or 6 years. And Halloran, was a very big inspiration, and his show and then his TV show. So, did a little bit of TV stuff, but, at the end of the day, we're really blessed, and, we were able to help a whole lot of people, for a really long time. And Knoxville just, just no matter where I go and travel around, whether it's golf or business or whatever, it always feels like home when you get back home.
Absolutely. And so was this a financial program that you were just kind of helping people with regard to their, their finances or perspective on finance, or was it a live show? What was it about?
Oh, like the seminars?
Yeah.
Or the radio show?
The seminars. You said you're on radio. So
the radio show. Yeah. So generally it was just more general financial knowledge, and so I would typically, take something or research something that was in the news or that was, going on in the economy at the time, and, just kind of talk about it. I mean, I didn't necessarily have any interviews people because of my schedule and having kids and stuff. I did it pre-recorded. But, I would generally just try to, empower people with some knowledge of things that they might not have known. And I come from a background of school teachers. So, part of any business, whether it's coaching or speaking or whatever, is being able to take something that's relatively could be complex or something that people don't necessarily deal with in their everyday lives, and break it down or give it to them in a dose of what they could understand, or use examples to help them understand the concept of what they might need to know. So that was basically what it was. It was, I mean, man, radio was some of the funnest things. So I can imagine you doing your podcast. I know it's got to be a lot of fun for you.
It is, it gives you, it gives you a platform to use your gift of communication to, in essence, pour into other people, right? I mean, I like to ask questions. I like to find out little nuances. I'm curious, right? I'm curious about, they say it's best to be not the most interesting person, but the most interested person, right?
Yeah, I
And
like
so
that.
for me, I come to find that I'm literally the most interested person. If it's something unique and interesting, if it's a storyline, if it's something that you've overcome, something that you're dealing with, you're going through, I like to hear about it, because I always believe that there are nuggets of wisdom in every story. We just have to do a better job of telling the stories. And so when I have an ability to tell a story or to share a story, I feel like it's important, because that's how I learn. I'm an auditory learner. Like, I love banter back and forth and conversation, because my brain then processes, and that's how I actually learn and capture information that I can then contextualize to somebody else to maybe help them through something that they're going through. So yeah, I get it 100%.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we, kind of skipping ahead or whatever, after, I mean, anybody who's been married knows that marriages can be tough, and it's a relationship.
Absolutely.
Relationships are difficult, and, went through some hard times in my marriage, starting, I guess now it's 2023. It's been, like 2016, 2015, 2018, right in there. And, so I tried to make some changes in my business. I was able to do some coaching and some consulting as an advisor for other advisors. And that involved a little bit of travel, which I found out, was kind of a strain, I guess, on the marriage at the time. So I tried to kind of transition out of that and started to look for some other areas to get into, other companies to get into that would allow me to continue to grow my business where I wanted to, but not have to travel at all.
Absolutely.
And so, getting to kind of the end part of the business, was, real good friends with, a bunch of folks, fortunately, all over the country. And, was introduced to a few companies that seemed like it was a good fit for our business, our clients, and, ultimately with anything, especially when you're dealing with people's finances, we spend a lot of time and research and due diligence and flying out to the companies before we start working with them, and, looking at the financials, meeting all the lawyers, doing all that stuff, because it wasn't an insurance company that we were used to dealing with. And so, started doing really well with that and working well. And at the same time, working, really just trying to work on the marriage at the time, and, not traveling. And, long story short, at the end of the day, we had worked with a company for, I guess, 2 or 3 years, and the company had been around for 5 or 6 years. And, come to find out, they started to go under investigation. And then during that investigation, they filed for bankruptcy. So, at the time, and so, it wasn't our whole business at the time, but because we still had done, I would say we probably did 90% of our business with, same as it used to be with insurance companies and stuff. But, it was one of those things where, I had trusted what we had done so much. I had my own money in it. My parents had money in it. We had, our staff, some of their retirement funds that at the time I had about 8 people working with me at our business. Real nice building. And it was something that we spent a lot of time, researching before we started working with them. But at the end of the day, they got accused of setting up the company incorrectly, like 6 years before. Right. And so that just caused a whole lot of issues with folks like myself, who were really just marketing and sales. I mean, we didn't have anything to do. We never, in any circumstance whatsoever, we don't, like if you wanted to work with me, we would just market a certain product or service, and then your money would go directly with the company. So we never had any touching of the money.
You're basically
or funds
a broker, or
like exactly.
A broker or pass-through.
For sure. And so anyway, but that, that bankruptcy, man, that bankruptcy lasted years. And so at the end of the day, from a, fortunate standpoint, a lot of people, the good news and the bad news is, including myself and my family, people lost money. But then, according to what I've read and researches and, the attorneys that have dealt with some of those types of things that have happened, because they're more common than, than we realize. unfortunately, is, you know, the clients got back more than, you know, about half of their money, which is a lot, unfortunately, because there's so many legal fees and things involved in cases like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, all of that, you know, I stayed in business after that was done, and just kind of changed back to what we had originally done with insurance stuff for about a year, and really just kind of tried to pare things down. But, you know, with a lot of litigation and, you know, just unforeseen circumstances, just ended up having to close the business around 2020, and, you know, and look for a different pathway. So for something that you've devoted your life to for 20 plus years, right? I mean, from 2001 to 2020, so 19 years as in the business. And then all of a sudden, you know, also throughout that time, you're skipping back timeline wise. I mean, I ended up getting a divorce and wasn't able to stay married. That was finalized right in May of 2018. Well, the bankruptcy of that company happened in July of 2018. So
right
that,
at 2 months after. Wow.
yes.
Ooh.
And so it was like this thing, and then this happened, and it's like, man, you're just trying to figure out how to go on with life after a big change, and then all of a sudden there's this another change, and it's like, man, I don't even know where to start. So, you know, so those, you know, couple of years, it was a very difficult time, to say the least, of change and, you know, question and so forth, just not really understanding, you know, what's going on and why, you know. So
I have a question there. So it's interesting, like, you mentioned earlier how in college you got connected with the, you know, a faith ministry, which, you know, kind of helped to establish, you know, a level of faith, not just going to church. Because a lot of times what's interesting, you know, we grow up and we go to church, and, you know, we're part of churches and ministries, but a lot of times people just go to church because that's just what they've always done, or they're part of some type of Christian ministry because they've just always done that. That's what my mama did. That's what my grandmama did. We're just following the habits. But sometimes it takes a situation or an exposure for us to fully get there ourselves. And it sounded like in college, that's when you kind of had your, you know, come to Jesus, air quotes, moment,
for sure,
where you really started to understand what it really means, so that it can now be applied to your life. And at times we don't know when that application is going to be needed. Fast forward 20 plus years, you go through this divorce, this bankruptcy, this dealing with this company in which you were representing, that you didn't have any control over what they did, but
it reflected on you.
It reflects on you. And, you know, it's kind of sidebar. Years ago, I was doing sales in the home healthcare industry, and, you know, I was a sales representative, but I was not the service provider. So we used to provide, the company I worked for provided skilled nursing care and occupational therapy and physical therapy, etc. And I remember going into a facility to sell our services. And I remember the representative told me, or the person who was responsible for the contracts told me, she said, Mike, we love you. I mean, we absolutely love you, but you're not the one providing service to our patients or to our residents here. And I was just like, that's interesting. And it made me really take a step back and think. She said, Mike, we love you, but you're not the one providing the service to our residents. And the one who's providing service to our residents, she sucks. And so as much as we love you, there's really, I can't do business with you because of the service you're providing. And I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I wasn't the service provider. I was a great salesperson. I was a great communicator. I built great relationships, but the thing that I was bringing was tainted. And I had no control over that, but it also reflected on me because I was a representative of that organization. And so it's just like, as you were talking, it made me go back to think through that specific, you know, time frame that I was dealing with. And it's hard because, you know, you really can't, some parts of things you really can't control. They're completely out of your hands. And so what do you do at that point?
Yeah, no, that's exactly, you know, very, very similar, you know, circumstance. And, you know, so skipping ahead to today, you know, throughout that time, you know, faith and relationships. I did a lot of counseling through that. I did a lot of, classes with different church organizations to, just kind of work through that. I mean, something not necessarily really more the marriage and the divorce than the business, because that was happening first. And so, but it turns out a lot of the things that I was learning to potentially at least have the chance of, not being divorced, having a better marriage, were those life skills and the mindset things, that I ended up needing to use in the next tragedy that happened in my life, which is, the main thing being, like you said, you can control this many things, and outside of that, there's nothing you can control. But one of the things that sticks with me that I tell my kids today, and that I've just kind of tried to write down and communicate in an ebook form, but the truest thing about us is what God says about us. And it's so hard in today's society because we're trained by all the media to worry about what it all looks like from the outside, and the perception, and the success, and the whatever it is. But with social media, a lot of people are sucked into being worried and creating all of this angst and anxiety based on what other people might think about them, or even if they do think about them, and they don't necessarily have that identity to stand on, to know that, hey, I can have peace because here's the things that are constant and that we know that are constant. Your relationship with God, your relationship with the family, these things are constant. And all this other stuff is going to seem like it's going crazy sometimes, but at the end of the day, that's just stuff, and we can't control that anyway. We control what we can do and how we react, and how we, I mean, like coaching football, we can control how our kids react, how they play, the effort that they give, the attitude. We can't control the calls all the time, right? I mean, so at the end of the day, you can't control all the calls, but that's, that just reminds me what you said. I think is very, very, in line with some of the things I've been through.
And it's interesting about this concept of control, and I think from this, and again, the title of the podcast is Impact and Fulfillment. It's like, my desire in life is to help as many people as possible have dynamic impact. But the and part, and fulfillment. I want you to have fulfillment. I want you to sleep good at night. I want you to have purpose and meaning with regard to what it is you're doing. Don't just go and get the deal. Make sure that deal is in alignment with who you are, right? In my latest book, the last chapter, the last law, is entitled "Always Trust Your Ass." ASS. It's an acronym, and it's alignment, self-mastery, and service. Because at the end of the day, we need to always make sure that we are in alignment with our purpose, and alignment with what God's called us to do, but then also in alignment with those that are connected to us. Are we in alignment with, people in our family and our close relationships? We have to make sure that those things are there. And that's the thing that one of the things that we have to trust. And it's challenging because, going back to what you were mentioning, society is very much image focused, right? It's on the surface. And, at times I call myself a quote unquote non-image consultant, because my whole thing is really, it's all about the authenticity and what lives inside of you. And the byproduct of you living that is the image that you portray. Most people do it in reverse. It's like they try to create this image. They want to wear the right clothes, say the right stuff, get their new porcelain veneers and their this and their that, and all these things from an image perspective. They want to lead with that. And then they're hollow on the inside. I'm the opposite. I'm like, yo, let's figure out a way to strengthen the inside so that the image that you portray is a byproduct of that. Then you don't have to put on a mask. And if you've ever done any acting, it's crazy. Like when you're on set and you're playing a character, it's interesting because look, when the director says, all right, it's time to roll, you go. But then when they say cut, you turn that thing off and you're back to being who you're supposed to be. And it's exhausting to play a character 24/7. So my whole thing is no characters, no images. It's just like, look, just be who you are and allow that to be so dynamic that the byproduct of that is the image that you want portrayed into the world.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to take a short break right here. I know maybe you can clip. I want to put my battery I'm on a
Okay.
laptop. Let me plug
Okay.
this mug in real quick. Just give
No,
me
you're
2
good.
seconds.
You're good. You're good. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we're back. We had to plug in a laptop. Look, this is real life. Look, we're
Yeah.
both dads. We both are doing these things on laptops. You know, we're figuring things out. If something dies, we got to pause it and, you know, let me
Right.
plug this thing in. Look, it happens all the time, man. Look, this is informal. This is a conversation we're allowing people to peer in.
Well, it kind of going back to what you're saying too, and just thinking back, because I'm sure you've, been through things in your life, and you kind of think back through them, but using that as an analogy, there's many times in life when you go through things and you realize that, or I guess I can just speak for me, one of the things in starting to go through some of that difficult stuff, that one day hopefully you can help somebody else go through that too, is figuring out. For me, it was realizing and coming to the realization that I needed to work, kind of like what you were talking about. I needed to work on me and being the best me I could be. And that's what I think in the grand scheme of, growing a big business and having success and, doing a lot of different things, kind of lost sight of. I use the example that, if you've ever played poker, right? The biggest pots, everybody gets excited and there's all these chips in the table. And, to use that as an example, I feel like, as I was kind of working through this and working through my relationship with the Lord and just on myself over the last number of years, I came to the realization that, at some point, in my life, as I started to have some success and do well, I didn't necessarily lose focus of the Lord per se, but I feel like if you were to have all the chips in the table as an example of the things that God has control, obviously God's in control of everything, but I think at a certain point in my life, what I realized is that I would take different chips and move them over to my pile from God's pile. Oh, well, you know what? I can take care of that. I got this, man. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Oh, well, you know what? I don't have to really depend on God for that. So, I'm gonna put that one in. And I think the illustration that I got in my head after going through all of this or during that is that, it ended up where I wanted my pile, the things on my side, to be bigger than God's pile. And so, that whole revelation is something that I think just changed my whole perspective on how to be a husband or a dad or a business owner or whatever. And to try to, I mean, my dad always told us and still does, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. But, to our lives, and to our kids, I mean, we got teenagers, it's all big stuff to them. Everything's big stuff, everything. It's the end of the world, and so trying to be able to, over the last couple of years, just kind of write down, said your book, I don't even know what I want to do. I mean, I have a book, but I don't know what I really want to do with it. But what I did, and I think it might have just helped me as much as anything, is just try to get down, all of these things that God was bringing me through and teaching me, just like any other sales process or business, a lot of times if you look at it close enough, there's a framework there, so I tried to put together a framework of, hey, what are the things that I am still doing today that I wasn't doing as well, to try to work on myself, work on my relationship with the Lord, to get closer to him, so that when the winds of change come in your life, you're ready and you're not gonna, fold like a cheap tent. And so my book that I've written is really just kind of walking through that from a devotional standpoint. Like if someone wants to have a quiet time or a devotion, like what could you do to put yourself in the mindset and in the posture to be able to get something out of the quiet time, because I catch myself, if we're being honest, I love the Bible app, right? I love the Bible app, and I still catch myself, sometimes not being as, serious, I guess, I can't think of a better word, with the quiet time that I'm doing. And which is a negative thing, but I think what it is too is that, the little Bible app has that little streak thing, right? And in your competitive mindset, it's like, oh, I mean, I don't want to break my streak. Instead of,
Mm.
saying to myself, hey, what does God have for me to do today? What do I
Amen.
need to be? What do I need to be aware of and ready
Mhm.
for today? I'm Sometimes I get up in the morning and I got so much other stuff going on, and it's like, oh wait, and it reminds you, hey, you need to read your Bible, and you do, but you don't give it the attention, right, or the sincerity that you should, because everything else is going on in our life.
So listen, man, the thing that's so interesting about it, about what you're saying, a lot of times we get caught up in routines and habits, right? And we get into our schedules and what I'm supposed to do. And I heard something years ago that really blessed me, and it said, don't value your schedule, schedule your values.
I
And
like
it's
that.
and it's interesting because when you stop and you look at it, a lot of us get so caught up in, I have to do this at 8 o'clock every day. I have to do this at 4 p.m. every day. I have to do this at
Hmm.
this time. And we get completely thrown off when our schedules get thrown off.
Hmm.
It's as simple as when you're driving home and there's a detour on the road. It's going to take you 3 minutes out of the way. Your
Hmm.
anxiety goes up, your anxiousness goes up. This is going to take you 3 minutes out of the way, and it possibly will keep you safe.
Anger could boil up, right? I mean, all this
Anger,
stuff because everything else is going on.
but the thing is, but we're so obedient to our schedules and our habits. And you mentioned something earlier about the notion of how we get things out of alignment, right? Again, that's
Hmm.
alignment is really big with regard to my thought process and my framework. And it's interesting because when I look at my life and I look at the lives of others at times, and then I think through the lens of idols, right? A
Hmm.
lot of times, what we've done in life is we've made idols out of things in our lives. And when we make something an idol, we're basically putting that ahead of God. And
100%.
the challenge is, so it's easy when we put something negative, like, drug addiction or
Hmm.
alcoholism or, fornication or whatever the
Right.
things are, something that the
The obvious
world,
ones.
the obvious ones, it's easy to say, oh, that's an idol that I need to get rid of. Watching pornography or something, I got to get rid of that or whatever it
Hmm.
is. But when it's something that the world celebrates, like, okay, going to the gym and exercising. But if you're going to the gym 4 hours a day, exercising and omitting or not doing some of the other things you need to do in your life, or if you're prioritizing that over everything, you've placed going to the gym as an idol in your life. The same
Hmm.
thing happens in business or with making money. It's like, okay, because you're getting it and the world's going to celebrate. You're on the Forbes list now and you're
Right.
one of the Inc.'s fastest 100 companies growing and etc. You're going to get celebrated. Oh, you're getting it. You're grinding. You're getting it. You're grinding. But the reality is, have you now turned that into an idol in your life? Right?
Hmm.
Even when it comes down to like your family and your relationships, as a father and as a husband, am I making that an idol in my life? Like anything that takes the place of God, even things that are seemingly positive, is out of alignment. And if we get things out of alignment, we're going to have issues, right?
Right.
It's just like when
Right.
people say, oh, my kids over anything, my kids over anything. I get that. I love my kids. I lay my life down for my kids without blinking. I'll lay my life down for my wife without blinking. But as it pertains to order and alignment, God wants to know that we love him first and we keep him first. Then it's everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Then it's
Yeah.
everything else. And I
Well,
think, go ahead. Go ahead. What are you going to
no, no,
say?
no. I just that same thing because that's in having a routine or a framework to make sure that you get the most out of whether it's journaling. I've
Mhm,
journaled a ton during the
mhm,
time, worship music,
mhm,
authentic prayer,
mhm,
all these things that whatever it is that you need to do to get in the mindset to get
mhm,
where you need to do or where you need to be with the Lord. That is a trickle down effect. So
mhm.
if we can start with that, then how we react to our kids, then how we
Mhm.
react to our
Yes.
wife, then how we react to the circumstances at work or on the football field or
Mhm.
whatever will fall in line. But like
Yeah.
you said, I think if we're not keeping those things in priority and making them, it's an intentional effort of making them a priority, then everything else just it gets out of whack, man.
And I'll throw in one more thing. And what's interesting about that, what I've come to learn is that if I'm willing to submit to keeping God first, he's going to allow me to do everything necessary and possible for my wife and for my kids and for the things from a business perspective or life perspective that we're supposed to do. He's just wanting to see and recognize that I'm willing to put him first, because he's not going to disrupt the divine order either. Like God will never put something in your life and disrupt something in your life that in essence disrupts the divine order that he's orchestrated and set. And that's something that I'm coming to understand as well, because again, and this is, if you're a person with high capacity, if you're a person with, skills, gifts, talents, or whatever, at times you start to read your own headlines. You start to think like, hold up, I can do this. I can grind my way into this. And the reality is you may be able to grind yourself into success, right? But the challenge is, it's a podcast that I listen to called Church for Entrepreneurs, which is really, really dope. And one of the things that he was talking about was he used the scripture of the blessing of the Lord hath no sorrow with it. And it's interesting because, yes, by the sweat of your brow and by your own sheer will, you can get yourself to a particular financial status. You can get there, but the blessing of the Lord hath no sorrow with it. So it's just like you can do it yourself, but there's probably going to be some type of sorrow associated with it. On the flip side, if you do it in the order and do it in the way that is orchestrated for you to do that, that's been directly ordained for you, which is going to be different possibly from everybody else, then you have the ability to do so without sorrow. That doesn't mean it's not going to take work and effort and sacrifice and all of that, but it's going to be able to get done without sorrow attached to it. That's the thing that's always kind of resonated with me when I get anxious about wanting the success that I know that's coming yesterday. Right? I'm like, I want this thing to happen yesterday. And I start looking around and I'm like, but I'm doing this. And I start the comparison, comparison's a thief of joy.
Oh yeah.
Then I have to take a step back and realize that, okay, keep doing what you're doing and stay in alignment with that, because ultimately the success that you have won't have sorrow attached to it if you do it the way that you're supposed to do it. It's not going to be perfect, but it won't have the sorrow attached to it.
I like it, man. I like it a lot.
So I guess kind of fast forward to now. So what do you have going on now? You said you had to shut the financial business down, but then you also mentioned again, married, you guys got a new kid. But then you also, you're doing some different business things now that I've kind of looked into, which is pretty cool, as well as, going forward and writing the book. And talk to us a little bit about what you got going on now, man.
Well, like we talked about too, still seeking every day, seeking the Lord to try to figure out what the ultimate direction is going to be. But since then, been very blessed to be with a woman who loves me for who I am and, is able to make me a better me, and so we've been married for almost 3 years.
Awesome.
We're blessed. Yeah. We're blessed with another son, her only child. So that makes 4 for me. And Cooper is 8 months old at the time we're recording this, and was born in February of this year. And it's just been a huge blessing. And I mean, I'm 46, so I'm not like a young baby dad, but it's a different perspective. It is and I'm in a different place in my life. So it's my other 3 kids are 17, 12, and 9. And they're actually getting to experience what it's like to raise a baby and have an infant in the household, which is a lot of joy. It's a lot of work, but obviously it's a lot of joy. So we're really blessed to be able to have that, in our lives and that part of the family. But as far as work wise, my wife and I, she mainly does the management of it, but we have some rental properties. So we have some Airbnbs, which, come to find out, in Knoxville is a very desirable place to, for people to come to, obviously to go to college and to visit and everything. So we've been really, really blessed with that. She achieved super host status for Airbnb, from the first time that, she was eligible for it. So, so in learning a little bit more about that, I mean, there's a lot of correlation between how to run a business, because it is a business, but the treatment of the customers, the customer experience, the communication, all the different things that you do as a host. So I've started to kind of write those down and put those in a course format. So it's not 100% finished, built out, but it's 100% on paper finished. So, but our goal for that is just to be able to, help other people that are, rental property owners know the value of how to become a superhost and what are the things, what are some things that I need to focus on and do, and how do I walk through that? So that's hopefully an area in the future we'll be able to help others with. But that's our main, source of, what we're doing in our time and work. And then, as far as other things I've done, I do some consulting work. I work with some folks that are still in the financial industry and help them with some different marketing and sales consulting. I'm fortunate to meet a couple of really great guys in the online sales industry. And, I have a couple of different gigs that I work on, from time to time. One of them is residential solar, but a lot of them are just remote sales. So I might work with people, last couple of people I worked with for solar panels for their houses were in Colorado. So, it's interesting now getting back into the workforce. I'm here on my back porch in my office, right? And, just with the capability of Zoom and post-COVID, all of these things that I'm really just having to relearn how the business world is working because, up until my business closed in 2020, I didn't even know what Zoom, I didn't even have a Zoom account, and now from 2020 to like everything that anybody ever does, there's this whole world of online sales and coaching and, so I don't really know what the next couple of years is going to have in store, but I'm trying to, with the book that I wrote and, our Airbnb experience and just some of the experience with sales and marketing that I've had in the past, just trying to, use that kind of like what you're doing with your podcast to help others somehow. I don't know what that really looks like, but, we're fortunate to at least be heading in a direction to, to be able to invest what we've learned and some of the things that God's taught us in some other people's lives to be able to help them through whatever they're going through. So I guess that kind of answers your question. It's kind of roundabout, but I'm doing a few other things, but
it's perfect. And I'll tell you the thing that's so awesome about what you mentioned. You said, I don't know what the next 2 or 3 years is going to look like. Even with a 20-year, airtight business plan, you don't know what the next 2 to 3 years is going to look like. And that's and that to me is such an awesome revelation once you kind of strip away, kind of the corporate talk and you're honest about it. Like business plans are honestly just guesses. If we really are honest about it, like we can have projections and forecasting and whatever. Those are really just kind of educated guesses. If we're really honest about it.
No, for sure. I mean, it's the same with life. I mean, the same with relationships. We still got to get back to controlling the things that we can control, right? And giving the, keeping our priorities straight and, working on ourselves and just being comfortable that God's going to take care of all of the details because you can still, we can try to manipulate the details all that we want, but at the end of the day, we're not in control of that. So, I think that's just, continuing to, try to communicate that to your kids and have, raise kids that are going to be good, citizens and self-sustaining and that love other people like God loves us,
Dude, it's interesting. It's like, we understand why by spending time with ourselves and time with God, we understand why. And then we start to understand what we're supposed to do. Then we have to take a step back and release the how at times.
That's good.
And that's the thing. It's like we understand why based off of our relationship. We understand what, but the how is always kind of questionable. But that's the thing we got to turn over and release. And if we have enough faith and courage to turn over the how, everything kind of works its way out.
Yeah, or at least it definitely works itself out. It may not be the way that we had anticipated it, but you can have peace about it because of how you got there. You know what I mean? So that's a big lesson that I've learned in the last 5 or 6 years. And, I think whatever the future holds, we'll be okay with it, because as long as we're starting, in the right path and staying along in alignment, then, whatever God has in store, we'll be in good shape with.
Yeah, and it will be good. Because
Yes,
guess what? That's what he said. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it happen.
for sure, man.
My man. So, is there any do you social media presence or YouTube or something? Do you have any place that folks can kind of follow you if they like,
Yeah,
or
sure.
websites, whatever? Mhm.
Yeah, our Instagram and TikTok, I think, are at Superhost Hacks.
Okay.
So Superhost, that's our Airbnb, and then most of my personal stuff is just at Trae Wieniewitz.
Okay.
But yeah, so we give a lot of tips. We do a lot of, from stuff like this with Zoom, some of the social media stuff is a good platform to be able to just share, some of the tips and things that you've learned in business. So we have a couple of different accounts for, well, one just personal and a lot of kids stuff, football stuff on there and everything. And then, and then the Superhost Hacks for Instagram and for TikTok.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure to put the Superhost Hacks link in the show notes so folks can follow you. But ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard part of the story. This ain't the whole story, part of the story of my man Trae Wieniewitz. And I just want to thank you for sharing with us today, man, because I think this is really going to help somebody to not get too caught up in the challenges, because the challenges are there to help make you stronger. And if it don't kill you, it's going to make you stronger, right? And you can learn from it. And a lot of times the things that you go through are not for you, it's for those that are coming behind you. So thank you so much for your transparency, your openness, and we look forward to more. We also look forward to getting a win this Saturday because our team plays. But
that's right.
But we're gonna make it happen though. We're gonna control the controllables.
That's right. We're gonna control the attitude and the controllables. But yeah, this is great, man. Thanks for what you do and invested in the lives of others. I hope you hope you have a great rest of your day. And man, thanks for blessing me with being a guest on here, man.
Awesome. Hey, y'all, as always, make sure to follow Coach Mike D across all social media platforms, Coach Mike D on YouTube. Share this thing. And if you really enjoyed this, leave a rating for me, because, that kind of helps you to jump up on all the different, podcast listening platforms and whatnot. Just follow my man, Trae Wieniewitz, at Superhost Hacks on social media. They have some tips on becoming a super host in the Airbnb market, but also just pay attention, because I got a feeling he's got some more stuff coming down the pipeline that you're going to want to be, mindful of. And, and as always, y'all be blessed, well, and wise, and I'll holler at you. Peace.
I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and follow Coach Mike D everywhere on social media. Y'all be blessed, well, and wise.